Augustine, the city of God.
Augustine, the city of God.
Saint Augustine.
De Civitate Dei.
Oh, some Latin right up front. There we go.
Anthropoganos.
Oh.
I just made that part up. I think it's against the pagans. The city of God, on the city of God against the pagans. That's like the formal title, isn't it?
That is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I wonder? Ask me what I wonder.
What do you wonder, Mike?
I wonder if you're still going to be crazy in heaven. I wonder, like, I'm going to see you in glory and I'll be like, you're still crazy. What's up with that? This is actually part of your thing.
I don't know, because the main ingredient to humor is surprise, but you're going to know everything. So,
well, you're not
no
actually.
Surprise. Like,
you're not going to know everything, because then you'd be.
You're going to know as you know, bro.
No.
That means you're going to have divine knowledge, omniscience.
Nope.
Isn't that what it means?
Nope. And neither will it be timeless.
Just joking.
And all of that. Good. Although Augustine did have some funny ideas on that, actually, now that I think about it. But anyways, well, that's another thing. All right. So Augustine, City of God, the greatest book in the early church, I think. This gets my vote.
I thought that was what we said last time.
No, I was just joking. See, surprise.
It's like, have you ever read Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones, bro? It's classic. Every single sermon is, and this is the greatest portion in the whole Bible. It's like, there he is again.
Yeah,
that's like his standard intro to every sermon. This is the hook, which is giving you the reason why you should listen. This is the greatest text that's ever been written.
Dude, I feel the pain though. I heard someone say, my favorite book is the one I'm studying, and it really is like that,
Yeah.
But in this instance, I do think though, of all the books we've looked at, Augustine, City of God is the greatest. Maybe only matched by his book, The Trinity, which kind of summarizes all of the thought, all of the achievement really of the early fathers up until that point. But the City of God, I mean, it's just mammoth. Can you think of anything more important?
No, I mean, it's a philosophy of history. It's a biblical and systematic theology.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Breaking some ground at a quintessential moment in history. I mean, wow. You know, Rome is falling. They're under, Eusebius's...
The barbarians, the Visigoths.
Yeah.
Ransacking Rome.
And this is post-Constantine and whatnot. So there they are thinking this is like heaven, This is the eternal city. They're in the glory, glorious, like golden age. And, and now all of that basically had to be, wrangled out of them. And it really set them up for Christianity from that point on. But not only that, you've got, I suppose, just a refutation of paganism, like unlike anything that we've seen up until this point. I mean, this is the one book I've actually read of all the books that we've looked at. So, I mean, just those first 12, I think, or 11 books.
I've got a PDF here, and it's 1,510 pages.
Yeah, felt that.
Monster
book. It was a biggie, yeah.
It's like a 48-hour audiobook. It's a big book.
It's a big book, yeah. And, it's so, I mean, I remember, I'm not going to rehash all of that because I sort of did a few episodes when I was going through it, but I remember just thinking there's so much that's so relevant, it's just amazing how you see all these ideas that we tend to pin on people a little bit more recent, to Augustine, but actually it's all at least nascently or implicitly in Augustine. Yeah. And it's not like just cryptic, it's identifiable, very clear, even for a guy who's just reading doesn't, and for me the experience was like I'm reading, I kind of don't understand, but then I find something, then I read something, then I kind of just go blank for the next 2 pages, and it's just one of those kind of experiences all the way through. But even so, I wouldn't call myself a high level reader of Augustine, but or is it a close level? I probably was a high level reading of Augustine in the overview sense. Yeah, but a close level, a sophisticated level, let's put it that way. And even so, it was just so, I mean, I remember thinking to myself, like, no one really looks at this refutation of paganism that he does, but it's just so incredibly relevant for like the stuff that we're dealing with right now. It's all been just critiqued to death, in that book, let alone the second half that sets it up for an understanding that we would almost all, I mean, in terms of antithesis, the two cities, the two loves, the seed of the serpent, seed of the woman, I mean, even if we've got another common grace doctrine that's kind of leveling it out a little bit, or we've got some other things going on, I mean, everyone kind of agrees on Augustine. It's kind of this, it's amazing what he does in that last part of the book. And then you've got like amillennial sort of styled thinking all the way through. You've got all that stuff with the Sabbath. You've got these interesting views of creation, which are a little bit different to everything else. And so, yeah, great.
Awesome analogy of, just an analysis of sin, just looking at the true nature of sin and digging into the fall and looking at where the sin was, and looking at investigation of the will and what will is, and just very, very
I was
deep.
seeing a lot of purgatory in the City of God.
Okay.
It was quite crazy. I mean, I don't know if it's technically, I would have to look at an expert to see if what I was seeing was correct. Basically, it went along the lines of, I was so interested by it though, because he was saying that hell, even at its worst level, is kind of a loving thing. He was, he was arguing the reason for it, this is just a classic indicator of how different he thinks to the way we would approach the subject, which is just why it's relevant, always helpful to read old books just for this reason alone. But, he's going, the worst thing that could be is annihilation. That to not exist, it's always better to exist than not to exist, like a dictum, and this is just a proven reality. It's like, there's no question that is true. So it's, God could just wipe you out, but he doesn't. And then from that you get the kindness in the purgatory kind of vibe, and I think you can sort of start seeing where he's going. Yeah. And things like Klein would agree with this, but the whole the glory of God being the very thing that is held to the one who stands in his presence, who is not purified. And then you've got the purification. If you haven't got a good doctrine of justification, then I think purgatory can come from that as well.
Yeah,
so anyways,
sure.
very interesting. He doesn't go all the way there, and still, just the way he thinks, he reasons it out so clearly. So couldn't recommend this book enough, even though it is a big ask. I mean, I've been intimidated. The idea of reading it was just terrifying to me for a long time. Then you just got to decide. It's kind of like reading Calvin's Institutes. You just got to go. You just got to do it.
Yeah, I haven't read through the whole thing. What I've been doing this week is listening to Graham H. Walker, and he's been doing a series of lectures on it in the C.S. Lewis Institute.
Okay.
The C.S. Lewis Society of California. Dude, it's awesome.
Wow.
I can highly recommend it. It's absolutely just readings all the way through, just key readings, and just like stopping and really mulling over what Augustine's saying, and then moving on. Just really, really, really powerful stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, I had a similar. I was working through Charles Matthews, I think it was. He's quite an Augustine expert, but he's one of the Great Courses. That Great Courses series. And he's going on Augustine, and it takes you through the City of God. It was actually longer to get through that than the City of God itself. So that was the one problem with that, but it was very good.
It's worth it.
Yeah, totally. So definitely with old books like this, where you want to tuck in and kind of get that info and historical stuff going, you kind of need that. All right. So without further ado, let's jump in. We haven't got a lot. Now you can see how kind of random it has to get when you're taking snippets out of this. But hopefully, if anyone's listening in, I mean, what we're trying to achieve here is just get you one click in on church history, really. At the end of the day, it's like you can read about church history, about Augustine, but how often do we read a snippet of what he said? And look, you could do worse than this. It's a terrifying thought that you could have not listened to everything we've covered thus far, right? We've covered a whole good group of decent early church guys that you could quite easily have gone your whole life without hearing a thing from or having read it all. And that is, I don't know, I find that terrible. Like that could even happen is bad, right? Maybe it's just because we're a bit of the nerdy theologian kind, but I think, to have lived your whole life and not even read any of the little bit of the great theologians and the classics of the church is a tragedy. So we're just trying to remedy that. Just trying to put something on the table so you can get through these times knowing, hey, I not only know about these guys, but I get a little memory of what they sound like. And that's what we're trying to achieve. All right. So with that in mind, you're going to kick us off with book 1, chapter 8, or?
Cool.
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right.
Just to say, I got my copy of Monergism.
All right.
Yep. So it's actually quite nice because the version I had, I needed to be able to do a clickable index. So I could just click on book 4 and it would take me there. My Kindle didn't do that.
Okay.
The one from Monergism does. So monergism.com, free ebook.
Nice.
The City of God. Okay, so book 1, chapter 8. So there's a heading here of the advantages and disadvantages which often indiscriminately accrue to good and wicked men. Will someone say, why then was this divine compassion extended even to the ungodly and ungrateful? Why? But because it was the mercy of him who daily maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For though some of these men, taking thought of this, repent of their wickedness and reform, some, as the apostle says, despising the riches of his goodness and long-suffering, after their hardness and impenitent heart, treasure up unto themselves wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God, who will render to every man according to his deeds. Nevertheless, does the patience of God still invite the wicked to repentance, even as the scourge of God educates the good to patience. And so too does the mercy of God embrace the good that it may cherish them, as the severity of God arrests the wicked to punish them. To the divine providence it has seemed good to prepare in the world to come for the righteous good things, which the unrighteous shall not enjoy, and for the wicked evil things, by which the good shall not be tormented. But as for the good things of this life and its ills, God has willed that these should be common to both, that we might not too eagerly covet the things which wicked men are seen equally to enjoy, nor shrink with an unseemly fear from the ills which even good men often suffer. Does yours carry on from there?
No, that's good. That's round about there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you see there it's kind of an implicit common grace, you know. He doesn't ever go there explicitly, but he sort of has to, because obviously, you know, you have these two cities, you have these two loves, but yet we all are sharing the space, and you've got to account for that somehow. So it's almost like a Ecclesiastes, you know, reality going on there in his mind, but he doesn't ever. And this is maybe the one thing that, you know, led to some trouble, and perhaps even now is becoming, you know, he's kind of the go-to if you want a Christian alternative, if you want a counterculture, if you want any one of those things, rather than a common grace, legitimate city, seek its peace and prosperity and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so you see a little bit come through there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definite common grace. Just looking at the next paragraph, it says something similar. It says, for the good man is neither uplifted with the good things of time nor broken by its ills, but the wicked man, because he is corrupted by this world's happiness, feels himself punished by its unhappiness. Yet often, even in the present distribution of temporal things, does God plainly evince his own interference. Yeah, just talks about how God is active. I guess it sounds to me like Augustine is talking about that. In common grace, there is... He does good to the evil, but he also does small disciplines. So it's not quite theocratic discipline.
No.
It's not quite theocratic, you know, the covenant of works being outpoured.
Right.
But God is just like a Romans 1 scenario where God is he does still make his displeasure towards sin felt to some extent, to a small extent.
You know, and where I would put that
without being a full theocracy.
Right, totally. So really, common grace, common curse is the idea there. That there is a curse. Death itself, really, at the end of the day, is something that points to an enmity with God. There's something, you know, we're not all simpatico with God all the time. You know, there's something in living in this world that tells us that. You know, why do all bad things happen to good people? Well, because we're at war with God. That's why. You know, that's the answer. And and so he develops that kind of concept. You know, and maybe as you say, goes a little bit over what I'd feel comfortable saying, you know, about little providential moments, but even so, you know, I think I can quite easily put it under the common curse rubric.
Oh yeah, I can work with that. It sounds like Romans 1 to me. Yeah,
totally. Exactly.
God does sometimes manifest an aspect of his displeasure towards them.
Right,
and that's true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got theocracy. You've got obviously we know those things, those judgments of God, even that weren't within the theocracy, like Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't know, just whatever else, we know those have happened. And I think we dealt with this actually. I'm remembering when we were talking about COVID-19 or something, probably, we were looking at how that all works and whether are you to see this as a judgment from God? And it's kind of like, you've got to balance that reality with the tension of, Jesus' own words. Hey, those guys, you don't think that you're any less of a sinner than those guys that the tower fell on and whatnot. You've got to balance both of those truths. But you've also got eschatological intrusion. You've got to think about with those sorts of things as well, where there's a technical sort of actual pointing forward to the wrath that is to come. And to the more general things. So I think for me, like the safe category to work with, again, as I was saying before, is just, there's quite a lot it's almost like it reminds me of extraordinary providence and ordinary providence, Yeah. It's really, that's what we're talking about. There's an ordinary providence, and then there's something like weird that happens. Yeah. And that's still under God's providence. And, obviously if it's a negative, you can't help but associate it to the reality that God's in control. And even if it's not you don't have insight to the judgment that's happened there, and you don't want to fall into the trap of thinking what Jesus warned about, that you somehow are better than that person or whatever. There should be a recognition that whatever is going wrong here will ultimately manifest one day in the final wrath of God, and even if it's temporarly satisfied in a way that we don't know about, we have no prophetic revelation or understanding to understand that, it's still not it's not going to replace what's coming, so I think it's still a safe category to work with, because
definitely it's what I like about it is that the common problem, whether it's Job's friends or whether it's Jesus' disciples asking him who sinned, this man or his parents, bad things happen to bad people, good things happen to good people, and Augustine's got the nuance to say that's not necessarily the case.
Exactly. That's it. That's a great way to put it, because you definitely pick that up in what he says. It's complicated, and if you just get that, I think that's enough. That's definitely enough to work with. Cool. So I'll just much
Book
shorter
4,
than your one.
chapter 4.
Book 4, chapter 4. Cool. This is crazy. I remember reading this bit. Without justice, what are kingdoms but great bands of robbers? For what are robber bands themselves but little kingdoms? The band itself is made up of men. It's ruled by the authority of a prince. It is knit together by a pact of association. The booty is divided by an agreed law. If by recruiting abandoned men, this evil increases to such a degree that it occupies territory, fixes abodes, and takes possessions of cities, and subdues peoples, it assumes the more openly the name of a kingdom, because the reality is now manifestly conferred on it, not by the removal of covetousness, but by the addition of impunity. Indeed, Alexander the Great received an apt and true reply from a pirate whom he had captured. When the king had asked the man what he meant by keeping hostile possession of the sea, he answered with bold pride, "The same as you mean by seizing the whole earth. Because I do it with a little ship, I am called a pirate. Because you do it with a great fleet, you are called emperor." Boom. So that's what I mean by the antithesis thing, because he kind of, we would go, all right, there is a legitimacy in the kingdom and the civil state and all of that. Augustine was loath to go there. He saw the antithesis. He saw, that cult of man as being the dominant reality there. And really common grace was less of a legitimatizing of that sphere and more a God, a necessary evil. Let's put it that way, a co-belligerency, something along those lines. And when it came down to it, they were just a bunch of pirates at the end of the day, and the system worked, as it worked. But it was no virtue it could be ascribed to them at all in making a great empire like Rome or anything. And essentially he's arguing like Rome is just a bunch of
You know what I love about that section? It's just master rhetorician.
Oh boy!
Just what a pleasure to read.
Oh,
just
totally.
a word game talking about justice, but they're actually they're a kingdom in and of themselves, and he's just there's that subversive critique where he uses that ironic twist on it all the time.
And
it's
that
almost presuppositional, but there you go.
for sure, absolutely, 100%. And that comes through in the first 11 chapters of the book, because you basically have him doing that with paganism all the time. He's just taking whatever they critique of Christianity and then just running it through reductio ad absurdum, just going, well, if this is true, then consider what you're actually saying here. And I mean, it's just actually quite amazing how he does it, and it's gripping. It's a gripping critique. He's really showing you how to reason and think through contemporary issues at the same time. So, yeah, great. Couldn't agree more. And that's a good snippet of it. It's obviously why it's included. But I like the way we're hitting that common grace theme right throughout on both sides. Cool.
Right. So this next one is probably my favorite. It's book 14, paragraph 28. And just listening to the lectures I listened to, it seemed that the most, exciting quotes for me, just in terms of theologically, were all from book 14. So if I was going to make a recommendation for anyone to read a part of the City of God to get stuck in, book 14 really stood out for me as a really catchy section.
I remember the last one. This is the last
famous section where it reads, of the nature of the two cities, the earthly and the heavenly. Accordingly, two cities have been formed by two loves. The earthly by the love of self, even to the contempt of God. The heavenly by the love of God, even to the contempt of self. The former, in a word, glories in itself, the latter in the Lord. For the one seeks glory from men, but the greatest glory of the other is God, the witness of conscience. The one lifts up its head in its own glory. The other says to its God, thou art my glory and the lifter of mine head. In the one, the princes and the nations it subdues are ruled by the love of ruling. In the other, the princes and the subjects serve one another in love, the latter obeying, while the former take thought for all. The one delights in its own strength, represented in the persons of its rulers. The other says to its God, I will love thee, O Lord, my strength. And therefore the wise men of the one city, living according to man, have sought for profit to their own bodies or souls, or both. And those who have known God gloried him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened, professing themselves to be wise. That is, glorying in their own wisdom, and being possessed by pride. They became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. For they were either leaders or followers of the people in adoring images, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. But in the other city there is no human wisdom, but only godliness, which offers due worship to the true God, and looks for its reward in the society of the saints, of holy angels, as well as holy men, that God may be all in all.
Yeah, amen. That's the heartbeat of the book, right?
What a contrast, eh? Just setting up the contrast. And what I appreciated in the lectures I was listening to, just in the opening salvo there, he says, be earthly by the love of self, even to the contempt of God. And one of the things that Graham Walker pointed out is that Augustine's not saying you shouldn't love yourself. Because the great command, the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself. There's a... Augustine's not against appropriate self-love. Mm-hmm. It's when self-love to the contempt of loving God. So once you love, when you have your ordered, when your loves are ordered in their proper way. Those all those loves are appropriate. So
that sounds
very
good.
interesting.
When it's not idolatry, exactly. And it's almost like you get Confessions meets City of God at this point. You get some of that flavor coming through. Confessions meets this sort of theology of the kingdom, and so you get some of these moments where he's doing what he does in Confessions. He's just kind of like just doing a little, what shall we say, psychology, Christian theological psychology, and just really bringing out those
and it's
moments.
A psychology by looking at hamartiology, because he's misdirected love is part of how he defines sin.
Exactly. And it's penetrating. It's like he knows his own heart, and it comes through in the way that he formulates his theology. It's great.
One of the things that Augustine does is he talks about the good things that we want, like wanting to become like God.
Yeah.
But in the wrong time, in the wrong way,
Yeah.
But it's the good thing of sex that we long for. It's the good thing of, we want the good thing of owning possessions and glorying in them. They're all good things, but in an illegitimate way.
Yeah.
And Augustine just picks up on the nuance. He's just really in touch with, where we would say that sin is that sordid, criminal, black, horrible, we have this stereotypical caricature of what a bad thing is. But Augustine picked up on the fact that, it's good things that we love wrongly.
Yeah, exactly.
Which are often at the heart of sin.
For all those Doyavirian fans out there, the structure is good, but the direction is wrong.
There you go.
There is a lot of that, just that structure direction distinction. In fact, a lot of the neo-Calvinists that sort of come from Doyavir's line of thinking, also latch onto this two loves thing in Augustine, and they tend to kind of work together on exactly the point that you just made. The goodness of creation, the goodness of those holistic desires that if not corrupted would be good things. But it's just they're used in an antithetical direction. Yeah. Good.
Great. Next one.
Nailed it. All right. Now I got a short little one again. So anyway, sorry I made you do all the reading.
Mine's long, but you do it.
All right. Well, I don't know. He's only got like 2 sentences, 3. Okay, here we go. Book 15, chapter 1. We have divided the human race into 2 parts: those who live by human standards and those that live according to God. Or to use Bahnsen's terminology, or Van Til, actually, it would be there is either autonomy or theonomy. That with you right there. We also mystically call these the 2 cities or 2 communities of men. The one is predestined to reign eternally with God, the other to suffer eternal punishment with the devil. That's it. And actually, that theme right there just runs its course right to the end, and just gloriously sort of, that last chapter where he just sort of just rolls with it all the way to the summary of the book is great. If anyone wants to check that out, I think that's my favorite chapter right at the end of the book.
Oh man, they left so much good stuff out of that chapter.
Yeah, you want to fill some of that in?
Oh no, it's just I was actually just eternally just the next paragraph down just talks about predestination by grace, elected by grace, grace by a stranger below, and by grace a citizen above. By grace, so far as regards himself, he is sprung from the same mess, all of which is condemned in its origin. But God, like a potter, for this comparison is introduced by the apostle judiciously and not without thought. The same lump made one vessel to honor and another to dishonor. Just going on about the grace of predestination, just very awesome. Powerful.
Yeah, wow.
Portion there. Yeah,
that's the Augustine we love. That's why we're Calvinist Augustinians.
Doctrines of grace. Yeah.
But yeah, that whole we have divided the human race into 2 parts: those who live by human standards and those who live according to God. The human standards are, autos, namas, and theos, namas. Autonomy and theonomy. I just think that's quite striking, because you often think theonomy and you're like, oh, stay away. But at an individual level, that's the bottom line. That's the antithesis right there. You either are living, according to your own rules, or you're living according to, God. That's the bottom line. That's the whole human race. And this is what ultimately will, and obviously it's not the living according to God that gets us into that eternal destiny with God, but this is the response of those who have been predestined and saved by grace alone. So yeah, there we go. There's a little bit of an insight into Augustine's.
Very good. I'm feeling very inspired. I think I might go get the audiobook.
What a journey.
48 hours.
Do you want me to just pray for you right now?
Just two whole days.
Yeah, you can try
2 days.
I think,
Put me on a drip and a bit of caffeine. That'll be fine.
I think you kind of have to hit it hard. That's the only way. I ended up doing I just went all day, every day. It still didn't take me 2 days. It took me like. But I think if anyone could do that in 2 days, I think you have the capacity next.
2 days of nonstop listening.
I feel like you might come out with bleeding eardrums.
Blood coming out of everything.
But it'd be worth it, man. It'd be glorious. Anyway, cool. So
How
there we
long
go.
did it take him to write it? Something like 13 years?
Oh man. And you know what's crazy? That I often think about this. Like, he wrote more than you can ever read, you know? And it's just like, how do you even do that without a word processor? You know, I just don't understand how that happens. But
His
anyway.
hand looked like that at the end of his life.
I mean, he must have just thought it and wrote it, and you know, that was it, published. You know, you got.
Yeah.
It must have been quite a free-flowing, almost like Thomas Aquinas, where he's like, you know, at the end of his life, he's like, yeah, he prayed. Someone heard him pray. I can't remember exactly how the story goes, but I'm just very thankful that I never had to read anything more than once without fully understanding it. Nice. Well, that would explain a lot. That's how you write. That's how you can end up writing.
Some of those
Summa,
old guys are tough, man. Those guys knew how to write. They were thinking it through. You know, Aristotle's four causes, and
I know that wasn't just like. I mean, that was You're
substantive. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, to think he's just going through the classics there once. Just
Now
okay. I got it. I'm gonna roll with this. I think. Funny, man. Anyway, so these are the giants: Augustine, Aquinas. So we'll get onto some Aquinas soon enough. Let's leave it there.
Cool, man. Cheers.
All right, we'll drop this before church. Quickly rope it in. What are we gonna say? You gotta go to church because it's the city of God. Nice. All right, here we go.
Yeah.